Sold as a Chinese widow, she found love with the gunslinger who called her his blessed wife. Families worked from dawn to dusk, planting, harvesting, and taking care of the household. Mei Ling's family was no different. Her father had passed away when she was very young, leaving her mother to raise her and her two younger brothers alone. Every day, Mei Ling helped her mother with chores, tending to the animals, collecting firewood, and preparing meals. She was only 15, but she felt much older because the world had forced her to grow up quickly. Despite the hardships, Mei Ling had a gentle spirit. She loved to sit quietly by the river that ran behind her home, watching the sunlight dance on the water and listening to the birds sing. It was the only place she felt truly free. She often thought about what life could be like beyond the hills of her village. Sometimes she imagined walking through bustling towns with people speaking different languages and wearing strange clothes. She dreamed of seeing the ocean, with waves that stretched to the horizon. But those dreams seemed distant and impossible, as life had already shaped her path with responsibilities and hardship. Her village was known for being simple, honest, and close-knit, but it was also a place where opportunities were rare. Families struggled to make ends meet, and daughters were often seen as a burden, especially when the family had little land or money. Mei Ling knew this well. She overheard conversations about how families sometimes had to make difficult choices to survive. One evening, as she helped her mother cook dinner over a small fire, she heard the village elders talking about traders who traveled from distant lands. These traders would bring news, goods, and sometimes promises of better life for young women. Mei Ling's mother listened silently, her face tense. Mei Ling could sense that the words carried fear, worry, and an unspoken truth. Some young women were being sold, sent far away, and never returned. The thought filled Mei Ling with dread. She had heard whispers of girls being taken to distant lands, called widows even if they were still young, and forced into lives that were not their own. The term Chinese widow was used by traders to make it seem like the girls had no family, no future, and no value except for marriage or labor abroad. To the world outside, it sounded like an opportunity, but Mei Ling knew it was a trap. She felt her chest tighten with fear, imagining herself in a strange land, alone and powerless. Yet at the same time, a small part of her, the part that had always dreamed of seeing the world, felt a flicker of curiosity. What would life be like beyond the hills, beyond the river, beyond the narrow paths of her village? She did not know, but she could not stop thinking about it. One morning, while Mei Ling was gathering water from the river, she noticed a group of strangers arriving at the village. They were men with wide-brimmed hats, fine clothes, and sharp eyes that seemed to look through everything. They carried papers and coins, and their voices were smooth, persuasive, and strange to her ears. The villagers welcomed them politely, but Mei Ling could sense unease. Her mother's hands trembled slightly as she arranged food for the visitors. The strangers spoke about opportunities in faraway places, about hard work and a better life for those willing to travel. To the adults, their words sounded promising, but Mei Ling knew there was danger in the sweetness of their voices. Days passed, and the strangers made arrangements. Families were asked to provide young women for employment or marriage in distant lands. Mei Ling tried to hide her fear, but it clung to her like a shadow. One afternoon, as she helped her mother mend clothes, a man approached her with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You have a strong spirit, young lady," he said. "A family like yours will find happiness far from here. There are men who will value you, care for you, and give you a life you cannot imagine." His words were flattering, almost hypnotic. Mei Ling wanted to run, to hide, but her mother gently took her hand and said nothing. Her mother's silence spoke volumes. It was a mixture of sorrow, resignation, and perhaps hope that Mei Ling could survive where others might not. Soon the day came when Mei Ling was to leave the village. She packed a small bag with the few clothes she owned and tucked a hand-stitched cloth into it, a gift from her mother. Her mother held her tightly, whispering, "Be strong, my child. Trust yourself and never forget who you are." Tears blurred Mei Ling's vision as she kissed her brothers goodbye. She felt as if she were leaving not only her home but also a part of herself behind. As the cart carried her away, the familiar hills and river faded from view. Every heartbeat was a mix of fear, sadness, and a strange sense of anticipation. She did not know what awaited her, only that her life was about to change forever. The journey was long and grueling. Mei Ling traveled for weeks, crossing mountains, rivers, and unfamiliar towns. Each day brought new sights and sounds, markets with people speaking languages she could not understand, animals she had never seen, and foods that tasted strange and foreign. At night, she huddled under a blanket, listening to the whispers of the other girls who shared her fate. Some cried quietly, while others tried to appear brave. Mei Ling often thought of her mother and brothers, imagining their faces and hoping they were safe. She realized that the world was vast and unpredictable, and she had little control over what might happen next. Yet she also discovered something new within herself, a resilience, a quiet courage that told her she could endure, survive, and maybe even find joy despite everything. Finally, Mei Ling arrived at the port city where she would board a ship to a faraway land. The city was alive with activity, ships unloading goods, merchants calling out their wares, and crowds of people moving in every direction. The sight both frightened and fascinated her. She had never seen so many people in one place, and the sheer size of the ships made her heart race. She felt small, almost invisible in the middle of all this chaos. The traders guided her through the port, speaking in a language she could barely follow, and handed her over to the ship's crew. Mei Ling clutched her bag tightly, her knuckles white, and whispered a silent promise to herself. She would not give up, she would not let fear control her, and she would find a way to survive in this strange new world. The voyage across the ocean was unlike anything Mei Ling had ever experienced. The waves crashed against the sides of the ship, and the wind howled through the rigging. Many girls became seasick, and Mei Ling herself struggled to eat or sleep. Yet she also marveled at the endless horizon, the sky stretching in shades of blue and gold, and the way the sun rose and set over the water. At night, she listened to the stories of the other passengers, tales of lands far away and people she might never meet. Each story gave her hope that life could be different, that she could one day find a place where she belonged. Even in the discomfort of the journey, Mei Ling felt a strange excitement. She was leaving everything familiar behind, stepping into a world of unknown possibilities. As the days turned into weeks, Mei Ling learned to adapt. She found small comforts in the routine of life on the ship, helping with chores, sharing stories with other girls, and watching the endless waves. She noticed the kindness of a few crew members who treated her with respect, and it reminded her that even in a harsh world, goodness could exist. Mei Ling also began to imagine the life that awaited her. She did not know exactly what it would be, but she hoped for freedom, safety, and perhaps a chance at happiness. The thought of meeting people who could care for her, who could see her as more than a widow or a commodity, kept her heart steady amid the uncertainty. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship approached the distant shores of a new land. The sight of the coastline filled Mei Ling with awe and fear all at once. The land was vast and wild, with forests, hills, and rivers that reminded her of home, yet seemed wilder and untamed. She could see small towns and people moving along the streets, and she realized that she had truly arrived in a world far from everything she had ever known. As she stepped off the ship, her legs shaky but her spirit strong, Mei Ling felt a mixture of sorrow for what she had left behind and anticipation for what was to come. She was no longer the girl who had lived quietly in her village. She was now a traveler, a survivor, and perhaps, if fate allowed, someone who could find a life of her own choosing. And so, with a heart full of hope and courage she did not know she possessed, Mei Ling began the next chapter of her life. The world ahead was unknown, filled with challenges, strangers, and endless possibilities. She would face fear, loneliness, and prejudice, but she also carried within her the memory of her mother's words, the love for her family, and a quiet determination that nothing could break. She was a young woman far from home, sold as a widow, yet she was ready to discover that life could still offer her something beautiful, something real, and something worth holding on to. Mei Ling stepped onto the soil of the new land with a mixture of awe and fear. The air was different here, fresher, with the scent of pine trees and earth. The sky stretched endlessly, a wide blue dome with clouds drifting lazily across it. Everything felt bigger and wilder than she had imagined. The mountains in the distance were taller than the hills near her village, and the forests looked dense and mysterious. She felt a strange thrill at seeing a world so full of life, yet her heart still carried the weight of loss and fear. She had left everything familiar behind, and now she had to face the unknown. The small frontier town where she arrived was bustling with activity. Dusty streets were lined with wooden buildings, their signs swinging in the wind. Horses trotted past, pulling carts loaded with goods. Children ran freely, laughing and shouting, while merchants called out the prices of their wares. Mei Ling's eyes widened at the sight of this new life. The town was alive, noisy, and chaotic, so different from the quiet paths of her village. She held her small bag tightly, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The traders who had brought her here guided her to a modest boarding house where other girls like her were staying. The women and girls she met were from different parts of China, each with her own story of leaving home. Some cried quietly in their rooms, while others tried to appear brave. Mei Ling felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She was not alone, but everyone here had lost something precious. The days passed slowly as Mei Ling tried to adjust to her new life. She learned the rules of the town, the names of the streets, and how to interact with the townspeople. At first, it was difficult. The language was different and her accent made it hard for people to understand her. Some townsfolk were kind, offering smiles and help, but others treated her with suspicion or indifference. Mei Ling often felt invisible, a stranger in a world that moved quickly and without pause. But she also discovered small moments of beauty, a child offering her a flower, a kind shopkeeper giving her advice, or the simple joy of watching the sun rise over the hills. These moments reminded her that life could be gentle even in a place full of unknowns. One afternoon, while Mei Ling was walking through the market to fetch food, she noticed a commotion near the center of town. A group of men was arguing loudly, their voices carrying over the crowd. People stepped back, giving them space. Amid the tension, Mei Ling saw a man step forward. He was tall, with broad shoulders and strong hands. His face was rugged, lined with experience, but there was a calmness in his eyes that immediately drew attention. He spoke firmly but with a quiet authority, and the argument began to settle. Mei Ling could not take her eyes off him. There was something about the way he carried himself, a mixture of strength, confidence, and gentleness, that made him different from everyone else she had met in this new land. She learned later that he was a gunslinger, known in the town for his skill with a pistol and his reputation for protecting those who could not protect themselves. His name was James Callahan. Stories about him spread through the town like wildfire. Some people admired him for his bravery, while others feared him for his toughness. But Mei Ling could see something deeper. She noticed how he treated those weaker than him with respect, how he never used his strength to intimidate for no reason, and how his eyes softened when he spoke kindly to someone in need. She felt a strange sense of hope, realizing that perhaps there were people in this new world who could care for her and see her worth. Their first encounter happened by chance. Mei Ling was carrying a basket of vegetables when the handle broke, spilling the contents onto the dusty street. She bent down quickly, trying to gather them, but a man nearby stepped on a carrot and almost fell. Before she could react, James appeared, bending down to help her. "Careful there," he said with a gentle smile. "It looks like you could use a hand." His voice was deep but kind, and for a moment Mei Ling forgot her fear. She felt a strange warmth, a feeling she had not experienced since leaving her village. She tried to speak, but the words came slowly, her accent thick. James nodded patiently, understanding without needing words. It was the first time someone had truly helped her without expecting anything in return. Over the next few weeks, Mei Ling and James saw each other often. He would check on her when he passed through the town, offering small gifts like bread or fresh water. Sometimes he would help her with chores or guide her when she was unsure of the streets. Mei Ling began to trust him, realizing that his kindness was genuine. She noticed how he treated others with the same respect, children, elders, and even strangers. It was unlike anything she had experienced in her life. She had grown up knowing that people often looked out only for themselves, and yet here was someone who showed care simply because it was right. Mei Ling felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. She wanted to know more about him, about the life he had led, and about the world he belonged to. James, too, became curious about Mei Ling. He saw something special in her eyes, a mixture of strength, resilience, and quiet intelligence. She had survived hardships that most people could not imagine, and yet she carried herself with grace and humility. He noticed the way she observed the world, how she noticed small details others overlooked. Over time, he began to speak with her more, asking questions about her home, her family, and her journey. Mei Ling shared stories of her village, of the river, the hills, and her mother's words of encouragement. Though her English was limited, James listened carefully, asking questions and showing genuine interest. Their conversations were slow at first, filled with pauses and gestures, but they grew richer with each passing day. Life in the town was not without its challenges. Mei Ling faced prejudice and suspicion from some townspeople. Many had never seen a Chinese woman before, and some whispered cruelly about her past. She sometimes felt the sting of loneliness and isolation, missing the familiar comfort of her village. But James's presence provided a sense of safety. He would stand by her side when needed, not with anger or force, but with calm strength that made others think twice before causing trouble. Mei Ling began to feel that perhaps she could belong in this new world, that there could be a place for her where she would be respected and valued. Despite the growing trust between them, Mei Ling's fear remained. She remembered the warnings, the stories of girls who were taken far from home and never returned. She was cautious, keeping her distance, unsure if she could fully believe that James's kindness was real. She watched his actions more than his words, learning that true character is shown through behavior rather than promises. Slowly, she realized that he was consistent, honest, and caring. It gave her courage, the courage to speak more freely, to share her thoughts, and even to smile in his presence. Each small interaction, each act of kindness, built a foundation of trust and comfort that Mei Ling had not known she could feel again. One day, a challenge arose that tested both Mei Ling and James. A fire broke out in the town, spreading quickly from a small shop to nearby buildings. Chaos erupted as people ran to save their homes and belongings. Mei Ling froze, unsure of what to do, her heart racing with fear. James appeared at her side without hesitation, guiding her to safety, helping others along the way, and ensuring that everyone who needed help received it. The experience was terrifying, but it also revealed the depth of James's character. Mei Ling realized that he was not only brave but also selfless, willing to risk himself for the well-being of others. After the fire was under control, she felt a profound gratitude and admiration for him. She knew that she could trust him not only with her safety but with her heart. In the following weeks, Mei Ling began to see life in the town with new eyes. She learned to navigate the streets, to speak more confidently, and to perform her daily tasks with efficiency. She noticed small joys, children playing, the laughter of neighbors, the simple pleasure of sharing a meal. She also noticed how James supported her, always attentive but never overbearing. Their bond grew naturally, built on respect, trust, and shared experiences. Mei Ling began to understand that love was not just a feeling but a quiet, steady presence, something that could grow in the midst of ordinary life, even after hardship and loss. As the season changed, Mei Ling and James spent more time together. They walked through the town, observing the changing colors of the trees, sharing stories of their pasts, and learning from one another. James admired Mei Ling's resilience and gentle heart, while Mei Ling admired his honesty, strength, and kindness. Slowly, the barriers between them began to fade. Mei Ling started to feel safe, cherished, and seen. She realized that, for the first time since leaving her village, she was not alone. There was someone in this vast, unfamiliar world who valued her, cared for her, and accepted her fully. It was a new kind of hope, one that made her heart lighter and her spirit stronger. By the end of her first year in the town, Mei Ling had grown into a confident young woman. She understood the rhythm of life in the frontier. She had made small but meaningful friendships, and she had begun to carve out a place for herself. And through it all, James remained a steady presence, a friend, a protector, and perhaps something more. Mei Ling did not yet know what the future held, but she sensed that life in this new land, though challenging, could also be full of love, joy, and opportunity. The journey from fear and uncertainty to hope and trust had begun, and Mei Ling felt ready to embrace whatever came next. As the seasons changed in the small frontier town, Mei Ling began to feel a sense of belonging she had never imagined possible. Life was still hard, and the world around her was unfamiliar, but there was a rhythm to it that she could understand now. She had learned to navigate the streets, to communicate more confidently, and to manage the tasks required to survive and live with dignity. Yet more importantly, she had begun to understand her own heart. Her feelings for James, the gunslinger who had quietly entered her life, were growing stronger each day. She did not yet have the words to describe the connection she felt with him, but she sensed a bond that went beyond friendship, beyond admiration. It was a bond built on trust, kindness, and shared experiences that had slowly shaped something new in her life. James, too, felt the change. He noticed the small ways Mei Ling was learning to adapt, the way her eyes brightened when she discovered something new about the town, or how her gentle nature touched the lives of others. He admired her courage, the quiet strength she carried despite the hardships she had endured. Over time, he realized that his feelings for her were no longer simple friendship. There was something deeper, a tenderness he had not expected to find in the chaos of the frontier. Yet he was patient, understanding that trust could not be rushed, that love was something to be nurtured carefully. He respected her journey, knowing that the past had left its mark, and that she needed time to feel safe and secure. Their days were filled with small moments that slowly wove their hearts together. Mei Ling would help at the market, arranging goods with care, while James would occasionally stop by, offering a kind word or a gentle smile. Sometimes he would join her on walks through the outskirts of the town, where the wildflowers bloomed and the breeze carried the scent of pine and earth. They spoke about their lives, their hopes, and their fears. James listened intently as Mei Ling shared memories of her village, stories of her mother and brothers, and the river where she had spent her childhood days. He never interrupted, never judged, and never made her feel small. In his presence, Mei Ling felt valued, heard, and respected, and this feeling slowly began to thaw the fear that had lived in her heart for so long. But life in the frontier was not without its challenges. Prejudice was a constant presence, whispered in conversations and hidden in glances. Some townsfolk were wary of Mei Ling because she was different, because she came from a distant land, and because they did not understand her. They questioned her past, doubted her intentions, and sometimes treated her with suspicion. Mei Ling felt the sting of their judgment, the weight of being seen as an outsider in a place that was still unfamiliar. She learned to navigate these challenges with grace, keeping her head down when necessary, yet never allowing herself to be broken. She found comfort in James's quiet support. He never confronted the prejudice with anger but showed strength through his presence, standing beside her in ways that spoke louder than words. It was in these moments that Mei Ling realized the depth of his character, and her admiration for him grew even stronger. As time passed, their bond deepened in ways that were both subtle and profound. Mei Ling began to notice the small gestures James made, leaving fresh water for her, carrying heavy baskets, or simply offering a reassuring smile when she felt uncertain. She realized that his care was consistent, not fleeting, and it filled her with a sense of safety and hope. Likewise, James began to appreciate Mei Ling's intelligence, her sensitivity, and the way she could find beauty and meaning in the simplest of things. He admired her resilience, the way she had survived the hardships of her past and was learning to embrace life in this new land. Each day brought them closer, and though neither spoke openly about love at first, it was evident in their actions, in the comfort they found in each other's presence. One particular day marked a turning point in their growing relationship. The town had organized a small celebration, a rare event that brought together neighbors, friends, and families. There was music, laughter, and the smell of baked goods filling the air. Mei Ling attended hesitantly, unsure of how she would be received, but James was there, offering a comforting presence. Throughout the day, they shared small conversations, helping one another navigate the crowd. At one point, a young child tripped near Mei Ling, and James quickly reached out to steady the child, while Mei Ling offered a gentle smile. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and music, Mei Ling felt a warmth in her heart, a realization that she could experience joy even in a world that had once seemed so harsh. James's eyes met hers, and in that silent exchange both understood something new, something that neither words nor gestures could fully capture. It was the quiet, undeniable truth of connection, of hearts beginning to recognize one another. Challenges continued to arise, testing their bond. One morning, a group of travelers arrived in town, bringing news of unrest in the surrounding area. There were rumors of bandits threatening nearby settlements, of danger lurking on the roads. The town grew tense, and fear spread quickly. Mei Ling felt anxiety rise within her, remembering her journey across the ocean and the uncertainty that had accompanied every step. Yet James remained calm, steady, and protective. He took care to reassure her, explaining the situation clearly and showing that there were ways to stay safe. His confidence gave her courage, and she realized that trust was a powerful force. She had come to rely on his guidance, not out of dependency, but because she recognized his integrity and wisdom. As the days went on, the bond between Mei Ling and James grew stronger in the face of these challenges. They shared responsibilities, helped neighbors in need, and supported one another through moments of fear and uncertainty. Mei Ling began to feel a sense of belonging that extended beyond her relationship with James. She was becoming part of the community, slowly earning the respect of townsfolk who had once been wary. She found satisfaction in small achievements, assisting at the market, teaching younger girls skills she had learned, and helping with household tasks in ways that made a real difference. Through it all, James remained a steady presence, never demanding attention, but always offering support, encouragement, and understanding. The emotional connection between them grew more profound during quiet moments. In the evenings, they would walk along the outskirts of town, where the sun set over the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. They spoke softly about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Mei Ling shared her longing to one day feel truly safe and cherished, while James spoke of his desire to find someone with whom he could share life's joys and hardships. In these conversations, they discovered a mutual understanding that transcended words, a recognition that each had found in the other something rare and precious. The bond that had begun with small gestures and shared experiences was now growing into something deeper, a connection that would form the foundation of a lasting partnership. Despite the growing closeness, both Mei Ling and James understood the need for patience. Mei Ling was cautious, aware of the dangers that had accompanied her journey from her homeland, and James was careful to honor her pace. They learned to communicate in subtle ways, through gestures, shared tasks, and silent understanding. The depth of their connection did not require constant words. It was evident in the way they cared for one another, in the quiet moments of trust and support. Mei Ling found comfort in this steady presence, realizing that love could be gentle, patient, and enduring. James, in turn, discovered that true strength was not in force or dominance, but in the ability to nurture, protect, and respect another's heart. A turning point came when a small emergency tested their bond in a very real way. A young girl in the town fell ill suddenly, and panic spread as people scrambled to find help. Mei Ling, with her gentle nature and growing confidence, offered comfort to the frightened child, while James assisted with practical tasks, ensuring that the girl received care. The two worked seamlessly together, their actions reflecting a deep understanding and trust. By the end of the day, the girl was safe, and the townspeople witnessed the quiet heroism of Mei Ling and James. It was a moment that solidified their connection, showing both themselves and the community that they were a strong, dependable team. It was not just bravery that mattered, but compassion, patience, and unwavering support for one another. As months passed, Mei Ling began to notice a change within herself. She felt stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing the world. The fear that had once consumed her was gradually replaced by hope, courage, and a sense of belonging. Her relationship with James became a source of joy, a safe space where she could be herself without fear of judgment. She realized that love was not only about emotions, but also about trust, respect, and shared commitment. In James, she had found someone who valued her for who she was, not for what she could provide or what her past represented. In turn, James found in Mei Ling a partner whose heart and spirit complemented his own, creating a bond that would endure the trials of life in the frontier. By the end of their first year together in the town, Mei Ling and James had developed a relationship built on trust, respect, and mutual admiration. They had faced challenges, navigated the complexities of a new culture, and found joy in the small moments of everyday life. Their connection had grown beyond friendship into something profound, something that neither could ignore. Mei Ling had transformed from a fearful girl into a confident young woman, capable of facing the uncertainties of life with grace and courage. James had discovered the quiet power of love and partnership, realizing that strength was amplified when shared with someone who truly understood and valued him. As they stood together one evening, watching the sun dip below the hills, Mei Ling felt a deep sense of peace. She knew that challenges would continue to come, that life in the frontier would always demand courage and resilience. Yet she also knew that she was not alone. With James by her side, she could face whatever the future held. The bond they shared had become a foundation of strength, hope, and love, a reminder that even in a world filled with uncertainty, true connection could be found. And in that quiet moment, Mei Ling allowed herself to imagine a future where love, trust, and companionship could flourish, where she could truly belong, and where life could be filled with moments of joy and fulfillment. Time passed in the small frontier town, and life began to settle into a rhythm that Mei Ling had once thought impossible. She had grown into a confident young woman, no longer the frightened girl who had crossed the ocean alone. She carried herself with quiet strength, and her presence brought warmth to those around her. Yet what truly transformed her life was the steady bond she shared with James. Their connection had grown over months of shared experiences, challenges, and small acts of kindness, evolving into a love that was deep, patient, and unwavering. Each day, Mei Ling discovered that life could hold happiness even in a world that had once seemed harsh and unforgiving. Their partnership became the heart of Mei Ling's life. James was no longer just a protector. He was a companion, a friend, and a constant source of support. Together, they faced the small challenges of frontier life, fixing fences, tending to animals, assisting neighbors, and navigating the unpredictable events that came with living in a growing town. Every task, no matter how mundane, became meaningful when shared between them. Mei Ling found joy in working alongside James, discovering that even the hardest days could be softened by companionship and trust. Through these shared efforts, their bond strengthened, proving to both of them that love was not only about grand gestures but also about the quiet, everyday moments of life. The townspeople began to notice the closeness between Mei Ling and James. At first, some were skeptical, not used to seeing a Chinese woman and a gunslinger forming such a partnership. But as they observed the pair over time, they realized the depth of respect, care, and mutual support between them. Mei Ling had earned their admiration through her kindness, intelligence, and the grace with which she carried herself, and James had gained their respect through his integrity, skill, and consistent fairness. Slowly, any lingering prejudice faded as the town recognized the positive influence the two had on the community. Together, they became a symbol of cooperation, trust, and compassion in a place that could be unpredictable and harsh. Love between Mei Ling and James continued to grow in quiet, unassuming ways. It was present in the way James would pause his work to bring her a fresh loaf of bread, or in the way Mei Ling would watch him quietly, her heart swelling with appreciation for the man who had entered her life and changed it entirely. They shared small celebrations, harvests, festivals, and evenings by the river where Mei Ling had once dreamed of freedom. They spoke openly about their hopes for the future, the life they wanted to build together, and the kind of family they might one day have. For Mei Ling, these conversations were more than dreams. They were a promise that she had found someone who saw her as more than her past, more than the hardships she had endured. In James, she had found a partner who valued her for her heart, her courage, and her spirit. Challenges continued to arise, as they always would in frontier life. Harsh winters, unpredictable weather, and occasional conflicts with travelers or settlers tested their resilience. Yet Mei Ling and James faced these obstacles together, always supporting one another and finding strength in their partnership. Their teamwork became a model for others in the town, showing that cooperation, understanding, and mutual respect could overcome even the most difficult circumstances. Mei Ling's confidence grew with each challenge, and she realized that she had become a woman capable of facing adversity with courage and grace. James, in turn, discovered that love and partnership could provide a source of strength far greater than any he had known in his solitary life. One particularly cold winter tested their resolve. Heavy snow blanketed the town, making travel difficult and causing shortages of essential supplies. Many townsfolk were worried, but Mei Ling and James worked tirelessly to ensure that everyone had what they needed. They delivered firewood, shared food, and provided comfort to those who were struggling. Mei Ling's natural empathy and James's practical skills complemented each other perfectly, allowing them to meet the needs of the community even in the harshest conditions. Through this experience, Mei Ling realized that her journey from fear to courage had prepared her for these moments. She had survived hardships before, and now she could face adversity not alone, but with someone who shared her commitment and cared deeply for her well-being. Their relationship also became a source of joy and inspiration. In the evenings, they would sit together by a small fire, sharing stories, laughter, and dreams. James would tell Mei Ling tales of his younger days, his travels, and the people he had met, while Mei Ling would recount memories of her village, the river, and her childhood experiences. These exchanges were filled with warmth and mutual respect, allowing them to connect on a deeper level. Mei Ling began to see that love was not only about emotions, but also about understanding, patience, and shared experiences. She realized that the man who had once been a stranger in the town had become the most important part of her life, someone who gave her the courage to embrace life fully. Over time, the couple made plans for the future. They discussed creating a home together, one that would be filled with warmth, love, and a sense of belonging. Mei Ling imagined a house with a small garden where she could plant flowers and vegetables, and James imagined a place where he could relax, work, and enjoy the simple pleasures of life. These dreams were modest, yet they held great meaning. For Mei Ling, it was a chance to build a life of her own choosing, one where she could feel safe and valued. For James, it was an opportunity to share his life with someone who truly understood him, and with whom he could face the uncertainties of the frontier. Their plans became a shared vision, a promise to support and cherish one another as they built a life together. The day came when they formally committed themselves to each other. Surrounded by friends and neighbors who had come to respect and admire their bond, Mei Ling and James celebrated their union. It was a simple ceremony, but it was filled with profound meaning. Mei Ling wore a hand-stitched dress she had made herself, a symbol of her journey and the strength she had discovered within. James wore his best clothes, though modest, and his eyes reflected the pride, admiration, and love he felt for Mei Ling. As they exchanged their vows, there was a sense of quiet triumph in the air. They had faced challenges, navigated cultural differences, and overcome fear and uncertainty, and now they were united in a partnership built on trust, respect, and enduring love. Life after their union continued with its share of joys and challenges. Mei Ling and James worked side by side, building their home, tending to their land, and participating in the life of the town. They faced hardships, as all couples do, but their love provided a steady foundation. Mei Ling continued to grow in confidence, contributing her skills, wisdom, and kindness to the community. James supported her fully, valuing her opinions, listening to her thoughts, and celebrating her achievements. Their relationship was marked by equality, mutual respect, and a deep understanding of one another. Together, they created a life that was rich not only in material terms but in emotional and spiritual fulfillment. As the years passed, Mei Ling reflected on her journey from the small village in China to the frontier town, where she had found love and belonging. She remembered the fear and uncertainty that had accompanied her across the ocean, the loneliness of adjusting to a foreign land, and the challenges she had faced in earning her place in the community. Yet she also remembered the kindness, patience, and unwavering support of James, the man who had seen her not as a widow or a stranger, but as a person worthy of love and respect. The contrast between the past and present was striking. Mei Ling had transformed from a frightened, uncertain girl into a strong, confident woman who had carved out a meaningful life in a place far from home. The town, too, had changed in subtle ways. Mei Ling and James became a source of inspiration for others, demonstrating that trust, compassion, and partnership could overcome fear, prejudice, and hardship. They were admired not only for their skills and resilience, but also for the love and respect they showed one another. Children would watch them with curiosity and admiration. Neighbors would seek their advice and support, and travelers passing through would hear stories of the pair who had faced the challenges of the frontier together. Mei Ling took pride not only in what she had achieved personally, but also in the positive influence she and James had on their community. Their partnership became a testament to the power of love, trust, and shared commitment. Through it all, Mei Ling never forgot her family or her roots. She carried memories of her village, her mother, and her brothers in her heart, sharing stories with James and sometimes writing letters to those she could reach. Her journey had been long and difficult, but it had also taught her resilience, courage, and the value of love and companionship. She knew that the hardships she had endured had shaped her into the woman she had become, and she was grateful for the lessons learned. Yet gratitude was not her only emotion. There was joy, fulfillment, and a deep sense of belonging that made every challenge she had faced worthwhile. In the quiet moments of the evening, when the town settled into calm and the stars filled the sky, Mei Ling and James would sit together, reflecting on the life they had built. They spoke of dreams for the future, plans for growth, and the hope that their story could inspire others. Mei Ling felt a profound peace, knowing that she had found love, trust, and companionship in a world that had once seemed uncertain and frightening. James felt a similar sense of fulfillment, recognizing that the partnership they shared was rare, precious, and enduring. Together, they had created a life of meaning, connection, and joy, a life that honored their past struggles while celebrating the present and embracing the future. And so, the story of Mei Ling, the young woman once sold as a Chinese widow, and James, the gunslinger who called her his blessed wife, reached a place of quiet triumph. From fear to courage, from loneliness to belonging, from uncertainty to love, their journey was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of trust, respect, and partnership. Mei Ling had found not only a home in a distant land, but also a life filled with meaning, purpose, and joy. She had discovered that even in a world full of challenges, love could flourish, hope could endure, and a heart willing to trust could find its rightful place.